We the People 2, verse 1, by Debra Hand. Something beautiful is happening here. Diverse cultural groups are gathered to celebrate Black artists. As one of them, I am grateful. I am grateful to those who have taken the time to come and witness the telling of our stories in our own voices. As African American artists, our stories are as diverse and multi-layered as our individual lives. They are as varied in presentation as our African American musical expressions. Our canvases sing, shout, wail, weep, and whisper in every emotional tone, from blues to jazz to hip-hop. Both our music and our visual art share the same complex root system, one that traces back to those very first moments when our African American ancestors secretly began to reclaim ritual and culture. It traces back to those first moments when our ancestors were forced by the requirements of survival to hide sacred bits of African culture. It traces back to that moment when our ancestors belted out the first Negro spiritual in unison and sent it traveling upward toward the heavens with all their might. It traces back to those same moments where our ancestors took those same Negro spirituals and evolved them into an entire encryption system, singing them as a way of passing cryptic messages between themselves openly without detection. African American culture emerged first from ancestors who had known lives in Africa, where creativity had been a part of every second of their existence and rituals. Now it was abruptly cut off. But here and there, a seed was saved. As African Americans, linking our lives back to our roots in the motherland is not as simple as jotting a hyphen between the words African and American. What has been lost is unrecoverable. However, our collective artistry is the closest thing we have as a means of reclaiming ourselves. African American artists are trailed by the ever-present shadow of American history. Even in a place as free as the human imagination, there is scarcely a thing to be found that does not form a tributary to the larger American story and to that of our ancestors. In many ways, our art cannot help but to serve as artifacts for how we've come through that history, where we've triumphed, what we've endured, and what has been gained, lost, or confiscated along the way. The American Verses exhibit captures vignettes from the African American story. In it, there is one common theme that peeps in and out of every work. It is the purposeful assertion of Black humanity, the purposeful assertion that I am human, and my being will not be invalidated. African American art, like no other American art, has had to serve the dual function of asserting our very humanness before the consciousness of this nation. Even when a Black artist attempts to avoid history altogether as the subject matter of their work, it superimposes itself in the most ordinary objects. A sugar bowl painted on a loving grandma's kitchen table inherits the ghost and history of the sugar plantations. A certain hue of blue echoes the history and horrors of the indigo trade. Our cotton canvases carry a storied beginning even before we make the first mark on them. Our brushes bear the weight of that history even while painting a single rose petal. But within those shadows are the echoes of our ancestors as well, and their sacrifices and legacies flow through our DNA and into our creative expressions. However others may see us, we are aware that we are the descendants of a great and powerful people whose history did not begin with slavery. They were skilled makers of the highest magnitude with centuries of lost wax bronze casting techniques. Ceramic pottery shards have been found in Africa that date back to the 9th millennium BC. In African culture, art and life are inseparable. The very act of creating itself honors my ancestors as we are continuing the cultivation of those tiny seeds they tucked away for us. No matter how different each African American artist might be from the next, we are each playing a vital part in the production of culture and in the effort to affect what culture will become. Art by African Americans, whether visual or musical, serves Black culture as a salve, as a place to self-validate, to take refuge, to remember, to heal, to rebuild, to resurrect. Black creativity is the power to which we owe our survival. It has sustained us from the time our ancestors were brought to these shores in ankle chains. It fortified us through civil rights marches, comforted us through horrific loss, united us in common struggle, and renewed us for every new struggle ahead. It permeates every part of Black life. It is integral to how we live, pray, replenish, and commune. Indeed, it is how we survive even still. As you look at the works in this exhibit, know that they live in service to the deep cultural roots of the artist, and it is important to resist measuring them by the yardsticks of Western or European art. To do so misses the point of respecting the culture of others altogether. From the beginning, Black artists have known America from an entirely different view than any other cultural group, and we create from our own truths. We are not behind in Western practices or perspectives. We have our own. And if anything, we are informed by a broader view of America's full, unvarnished truth. It is a wondrous thing that African American artists throughout history have known no interruption in their ability to wrest art and beauty from this world, despite every atrocity our ancestors endured in America, and despite those that continue today. To know that we are the descendants of such extraordinary people, I cannot help but be awash with reverence and love for them. I guard their light in me like a sacred flame. Art created by African Americans is not merely a subset of Western art. Instead, it is its uncredited parallel, and it has evolved on its own with no less merit, substance, or excellence. It is not merely an Attic find to be comfortably shoehorned into some insignificant category of the art historical canon. Like Western art, it spans each and every century of American history and is a multifaceted reflection of America's story and our own. As African American artists, we have had to cull culture from ourselves and from the bits and pieces secretly clung unto by our ancestors and smuggled along that infamous hyphen as the word African was slammed violently and disruptively into the word American. Through our art, Black artists by and large are laboring still to reclaim for our cultural group what was lost. We are reassembling the shattered parts, guided by the powerful persistence of DNA memory and the deep respect for our ancestors whose endless strength and creativity paved our way. Every human born to earth is born into the right to tell their own story, and no one has the right to edit it to suit their own preferred narrative. Each of our lives is a story that each of us is writing in real time. If we are not authentic to our own emotions, then what is the point of art? What would be the point of the human gift we've been granted through our imaginations if the imagination itself is devoid of freedom? No cultural group's story is more important to document and honor than another's in a collective society, especially where a society refers to itself as a democracy. Today, it is refreshing to see art by African American artists being celebrated on America's main stages. It offers much to be examined and informed by. As with any European artist who is influenced by their birth country, so too is the African American artist. A painting of any Black family by Kerry James Marshall is no less capable of presenting a profound parable than Rembrandt's Prodigal Son. Mark Bradford's multi-layered constructed and deconstructed assemblages are no less abstracted commentaries on the destructive forces of class-based warfare than Picasso's Guernica. The late Terry Adkins, having both visual art and music as part of his practice, used those mediums in literal concert with each other, echoing the galvanizing force of music in Black culture and in igniting the first sparks of change in America. It was blues and jazz that first floated across American color lines, creating indisputable proof of our humanity, beauty, and mastery of both skill and imagination. African American music dominates world culture and has provided America the majority of her original art forms when you combine jazz, blues, R&B, and hip-hop with African American dance. Pop music draws its lifeblood from various combinations of these genres, as does rock and roll. To this day, African American art forms are largely a medium of survival, and its inescapable mantra is this: I am human, and I will not be invalidated. while none of us can unlive or undo the hyphen between those words, and no one living bears the fault for that horrific period, the fallout it creates to this very day belongs to all Americans. The American dream is not possible without benefiting from that long ago installed system of stolen lives and labor, and its surviving inbuilt systems designed to distribute realities according to color in every area, from education to health to housing to access to capital to art. More than ever, America herself is demanding a reckoning of us. She is demanding of us the work that will finally transform that infamous hyphen into an equal sign. Today's gathering is part of that work. Indeed, something beautiful is happening here. We have come together around Black art in search of a deeper dialogue and understanding. Together, we are in search of the insight needed to repair ourselves as a human race. This is both the greatest act of humanity and civilization, the ones under which all great acts of goodwill and fellowship are made possible. As you examine the art created by these profound African American artists, I invite you to honor our ancestors in the process. They dreamed for such a day as this, when we might stand together as a human race in honor of Black humanity. Thank you.